Madam President, I rise today to talk about a hold I have on the nominee that we'll be voting on here to move forward, on Gina McCarthy, the president's nominee to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. There are lots of things to be concerned about the Environmental Protection Agency. There's no doubt about that. The 12 states that just sued the EPA over the agency's sue and settle tactics, the rules and regulations that I think, if they are allowed to go forward, will raise energy prices. There are lots of things to debate, and we'll continue to debate those. This is about a more targeted area. I've only been in the Senate a couple of years, and what's a hold? A hold is you put a hold on a nomination on a problem that really needs to be solved, or on a problem that just can't be solved. Some objection to the nominee, some objection to something that has happened that should permanently disqualify that particular individual from any job. That could be one kind of hold. This is a hold on a problem that could be solved. This is one of the things that individual senators still have the ability to do, to not stop a nominee, but at least to make it more difficult for that nominee to be confirmed. And it's one of the things you can do to say, let's do what we can to solve this problem. It has to be defensible. It has to be something, in my view, you're willing to talk about. We did away with the so-called secret holds in the Senate in recent years, so you know who has the hold. And if you want to know, I suppose you can almost always find out why they have it. In my case, I'd just like the administration to do something that they promised to do in February, and that's to reach a set of agreement on a set of facts that relate to a longstanding project in my state, in Missouri. Let me be clear, I'm not asking anybody to spend any money. I'm not asking anybody to approve a project. This is about a draft statement that's out there that the government keeps arguing with itself about. There's an old saying, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And I don't care what opinion any of these agencies have. That is actually outside of this discussion. What I care about is agreeing on the facts. There's a project in the Boot Heel of Missouri. It's actually one of the projects that anybody with a map of the United States can get pretty close to where it is, because the Boot Heel in southeast Missouri is pretty easy to find on any map that identifies the state, so you can get really close to where this project is. The St. John's Bayou-New Madrid Floodway Project has frankly been mired in bureaucratic infighting and unresolved government disputes for at least 30 years. In fact, 1954 was when the government said they were going to take care of this levee problem. 1954, they said it again in 1986, as if maybe every 32 years we just need to renew our commitment to do this job. Congress has authorized this project. It would add 1,500 feet of levee. It would close a gap in the levee system around the river. 1,500 feet, that's not a long space. You could measure it by football fields or however else you wanted to, but 1,500 feet is what we're talking about. We're talking about how that would work. After years of back and forth over the first environmental impact statement, the Army Corps of Engineers produced a second draft of this statement in July of 2011. Now, what do I mean by agreeing to the facts? One of the facts in dispute in any levee flood is always wetlands. So in this case, the U.S. Department of Agriculture says there were 500 acres of wetlands. The Environmental Protection Agency said, no, there are 118,000 acres of wetlands. Now, this is a pretty big floodway, obviously, if 117,500 acres of it could be in dispute as to whether it was wetlands or not. And that's a pretty big discrepancy. And these are two government agencies. And Madam President, there's only one definition of what a wetland is. So it's either, is it 500 acres or is it 118,000 acres? And I think Fish and Wildlife had some number somewhere in the middle, but that's no way to solve disputes. The facts are the facts. What meets the definition here? And this draft environmental impact statement And this would be a draft that if it became public, people could comment on. It's not even a final statement. It's a draft statement. It's what I've been asking for. It's been out there for 2 years now. In March of 2012, I sent 2 letters to try to address this problem, one to the Fish and Wildlife Service and one to the EPA. In June of 2012, the Army Corps withdrew the revised statement due to ongoing concerns with these other 2 agencies. And okay, June of 12, they withdraw it. September of 2012, Congresswoman Emerson and I from that congressional district in Missouri sent a letter expressing our disappointment that all this foot dragging is going on. That same time, in October of that year, we visited the project to try to figure out what the problem could be for all the farm families and others who are impacted by that, and others who want to be sure they have the right kind of flood protection. In December of 2012, my Missouri colleague, Senator McCaskill, wrote the heads of the EPA and Fish and Wildlife demanding that they reach a resolution in 30 days and that they present this new environmental impact statement in 60 days. So you've got a Republican senator and a Democrat senator both asking the government to quit arguing with itself and come up with an agreement on the facts. This is about the facts, not about opinions. So in July of 2013, the Army Corps withdrew its revised draft statement once again, and the EPA said, we're going to take this all the way to the White House for review. And so in February of this year, 2013, Senator McCaskill and I had a meeting in her office with representatives of these agencies. And during that meeting in February, all the agencies agreed to reach an agreement surrounding the facts by March the 15th. Now, they came up with this deadline. Senator McCaskill didn't ask them, when can you do this? I didn't say, how quickly can you do this? They said, we will get this done by March the 15th. Unfortunately, on March the 15th, they call and say, well, you know, we just couldn't quite get it done by March the 15th. And so I said, okay, I'm the one person I can have some impact here is this nominee for EPA. So the next week, March the 18th, I placed a hold on her nomination. I frankly thought this would be a couple of weeks because after all, they had thought a month earlier they could do this in 2 weeks. Now I'm saying, okay, let's get this done. You can't just promise members of the Senate you're going to do something and then decide you're going to ignore it. So nothing has happened yet. The March 15th deadline has come and gone. May 2013, I went to the project site again. I met with Gina McCarthy that month to express my concerns over this bureaucratic infighting. I contacted the White House to attempt to get this situation resolved for Southeast Missourians and people in actually neighboring states that benefit from how this floodway works as well. And unfortunately, we're still waiting. 10 days ago, the EPA, the Corps, and Fish and Wildlife sent a letter on the status. They said that there was some common understanding. I wrote a letter right back and said, what does that mean? Does that mean you have understood you don't agree with each other? Or what does that mean? Can we get these facts determined? And so far, I've heard nothing. And I want to note, does the Natural Resource Conservation Service agree with the new definitions that EPA's come up with a new definition of farmable wetlands? Nobody's ever heard of this before that I know of. It's not defined anywhere in law, just at the EPA. Finally, has there been an agreement with the Corps, the EPA, Fish and Wildlife on whether or not proposed mitigation actions are all both valid and adequate? Of the 471 comments that came out, 115 of them concern mitigation, and most of them came from EPA, and this is internal comments. We haven't even gotten to a point yet where a citizen can say, I like this project, I don't like it, here's what I think's wrong with it. So I sent a response to the administration on July the 9th and said, here are more questions. Let me just say, Madam President, that most of these, the most pressing question here really is, why can't we manage the government? The administration on this issue said, well, you know, the government's big and complicated and you can't expect the president to run everything in the administration. Actually, I do expect the president to do that. The Constitution expects the president to do that. And again, as I conclude, let me just say, I will vote not to go forward with her nomination. I may not prevail, but this is a reasonable thing to ask. I'm not asking the federal government to spend a dime or to approve construction. I'm just asking them to agree to the facts. You wouldn't think that would be hard to do, but in this case, it's been pretty hard to do. The government needs to stop arguing with the government. I'm going to keep fighting for the people I work for to have a right to know what are the facts and what should we be considering as we decide whether we should move forward with this project that the federal government said in 1954 and again in 1986, here's something we're going to do, and here's the authorization to do it. Well, let's find out if it really works or not by just putting the facts on record.